Thank you.
Thank you, Lakshmi. We will now light the lamp, as is the traditional form of inauguration. I invite our chief guest for the day, Mr. Suresh Krishna, Chairman and Managing Director of Sundaram Fasteners Limited, Mr. Lakshmi Narayan, Vice Chairman Cognizant Solutions and President of the TiECON Chennai chapter, Mr. Gopal Srinivasan, Chairman and MD of TVS Capital Funds Limited, Mr. Ramraj, past President of TiE, Entrepreneur and Senior Advisor to Sequoia Capital, and Mr. R. Narayanan, Chairman TiECON. The lighting of the lamp symbolizes that we bow to knowledge as the greatest of all forms of wealth, and just as how the lamp gets no dimmer with light that it passes on when we ignite other lamps, knowledge gets no lesser as we impart and share with a larger populace. Gopal Srinivasan, Chairman and MD, to continue to remain on stage, and also invite his co-host for the award ceremony, Mr. Govindraj Etraj, the erstwhile founder, editor-in-chief.
I think you can now. So, we've seized this opportunity. Good morning to everybody and welcome, Vanakkam, to this 4th edition of TiECON. Today's theme is absolutely fantastic, and we have a great chief guest whose life we're going to walk through over the last 50 years, where he's been building a fabulous business. Let's give a big hand and welcome our chief guest. But before we start, I think I'd like to introduce to Suresh the audience here today. For them, the opportunity sees it, size it, sees it is like telling a shark that it has to eat. It's obvious. For them, the fact that the rupee is a lifetime low and the Sensex at an annual low is a sign of opportunity. There must be something that they can do because of this opportunity. They are entrepreneurs who single-mindedly are taking up one idea and making that idea succeed, as Lakshmi said in his example about education. So we're delighted to have such a great audience of entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs. India has 3 times more talent, Suresh, now who are 15 years experience than 10 years ago. And as we know, talent is one of the key fuels for entrepreneurship. When we say TiE, we say I is innovation, E is entrepreneurship. I say T is talent. And today we have 3 times more talent. And these talented youngsters know that 70% of the Bombay Stock Exchange 500 are family and founder companies. They want to be there soon, and that's why they're here with us today. So thank you very much for joining us. I know it's a bit of an early start today. Thank you for joining us. You know, when we think about the entrepreneurs who are winning awards today, and we think about you, one cannot but recall a Greek fable. The hero comes, emerges, struggles. And as you know, often people say, especially Freud used to say, the period of struggle is perhaps on recollection, the sweetest period of your life. And after the struggle, the hero comes back triumphant. So you are very much to me like that Greek hero, as are the other entrepreneurs here, maybe in various stages of their journey. But Suresh, as a hero, a Greek hero, one thing which I find interesting about you is, in Greece there was Athens, which was known for its celebration of literature, music, poetry and art. And there was Sparta, which was known for its simplicity, its sense of sacrifice, and its single-minded devotion towards winning. I somehow see you as a person, and I'd like to walk through that, as a person who stood at the junction of Athens and Sparta in many ways. You're a visionary, you're an entrepreneur, and in 50 years you built a $500 million business. And you also stayed for 50 years in the same house, I understand. Not in addition to having raised a great family for the last 50 years. You've done many things in your life. You've been on many boards. But today what we'd like to talk about is not your awards like the Padma Shri or what you've done on other boards, but really the story of your life. And I'd like to really start with that. To give you a quick introduction, Suresh, I think when you went to college, you looked at it, your first period of transformation, you went to college at Wisconsin, purportedly to study engineering, I believe, and quickly changed to literature. And a nice professor there called Dr. Sridhar took you under his wing and then took you also to Munich, to the famous Maximilian University, 500 years old, and where I think 34 Nobel Prize winners have come from, and you actually studied literature instead. Do you want to just talk to us about how you made this transition from the very Spartan, tedious work ethic to this very rich Athenian type of literature?
Well, it's if I analyze my own personality, and I have to be true to my own personality, actually engineering is as far away from me as anything can be. I went there to study engineering to Wisconsin, but I very soon realized that I was not going to be happy studying engineering. It was not me. And I think it's more my mother's influence. My mother, some of you might know, Ambujam Krishna has composed a lot of songs. She used to write poetry. She used to paint, and she was very fond of anything that was literary, and she has influenced me very early in her life to understand the nuances of literature, poetry, and such. So when I found that I was not a very engineering-oriented person, it was easy for me to shift. And then one can ask, why literature? I think literature encompasses the true spirit of humanity. Walk through entire life, whether it is Greek literature, Roman literature, Baroque literature, Middle Ages, Romantic literature, storm and stress literature. One goes through the entire evolution of humanity through various phases. So I think that appealed to me a lot more to pursue and develop myself rather than doing engineering. A lot of you might not agree, but that's how it was. And of course, in order to do that, I had to have a golden parachute, and that parachute was TVS. I mean, I always knew that if I ever did not find a job as a professor of literature, I could always fall back on TVS, and that's how the whole thing started.
And yet, you came back and very, very much like a Spartan in the spirit of self-control, you fell in line and you started, after this enormously rich training, you started a nuts and bolts business when your cousins were working in Lucas TVS and Wheels India and all these big companies. You took the 7 lakh little business and fell in line. Why nuts and bolts? I mean, I'm not able to understand.
It's a very simple thing. Actually, by the time I came back in 1962, TVS had already put in money in all the other areas like Sundaram Clayton, Brakes India, Lucas TVS, Wheels India. You know, they were very thin on cash at that point of time, and they didn't have much money. So when I came back, they just didn't know what to do with me for a short period of time until your father, my uncle, called me one day and he said, I think you have to do something. You can't just sit around for a year. So he said there is opportunity for making bolts and nuts, and bolts and nuts are fundamental to engineering. It'll never fade. It'll never go out of style. And so why don't you take it? And to me, it made no difference. If he had told me to make a Rolls-Royce car, it would have made as much impact on me as making nuts and bolts, because I didn't know anything about engineering. I was totally oblivious, and sometimes ignorance is bliss. And you don't know much about it, you don't ask many questions, you just follow. So I said, okay, fine, I'll make bolts and nuts. And so I started reading books on how to make bolts and nuts. You would not believe that that's where I started. And they didn't give me much money. They gave me 7 lakhs. That's all the money I got at that point of time. And but 7 lakhs was a lot of money in 1962. And So that's where we got 2 machines, and we started in a small 7,000 square feet factory in Ambattur Industrial Estate, and then it germinated from there. No.
And yet, finally, everything has to start like you did in the small industrial estate when all your peers were at party. You started this struggle, and I just want to also at this point pause, Suresh, and invite a very interesting entrepreneur on stage to receive the Startup Entrepreneur of the Year award. A young person who has really blazed a trail. He's a Microsoft partner, the winner of the Economic Times Power of Ideas. Can I invite Vinod Harit to receive the Startup Entrepreneur of the Year award? Play the video, please. Congratulations. Suresh is doing the award, please.
We would close this year with about 5-6 crores in revenues, and we're looking at being a 20 crore company next year. So from that perspective, I think it's been a great journey so far, and worth every bit of risk or money we put on the table.
And then I think this next period of your life I find very interesting. It's a time when essentially you took 15 years, I think from 1965 to about 1980, to actually build a 10 crore business. Yeah. It must have been a tough time because this is the peak of the so-called license Raj, stifling you in every single way. And yet during that time, and I want you to comment on this for a second, because it reminds me of somebody else, you actually did a series of interesting things. For example, you tried to export to Mercedes-Benz in 1970, a time that we could not think of doing that in India. And you tried to export to Malaysia, I was told. In some sense, what was pushing you even in those stifling times? You could have just sit back and gone to the club at 5 o'clock every evening and not do any of this.
See, I had a disadvantage which was actually an advantage. Because I did not know anything about either engineering or running a business, I had to learn it. And the only way I could learn it was to work between 12 and 15 hours a day in the factory. Ask questions. In Tamil, they call it Kelvinyanam. You ask questions, get an answer, and then you build on it. So that was a time when I was a very intensely passionate entrepreneur who used to go to work at 7 o'clock in the morning, come back home at 7 o'clock, have a shower, and then go back to work again, and come back home by about 12:30. And I must, at this point of time, thank my wife because she put up with all these things. I was doing this for a long time, for almost 10 years. She used to come with me in the car at 7 o'clock, and then poor thing, she will go to sleep in the car. And then I wake her up and then bring her back home again. So it is a process of learning by osmosis and a process of learning by asking questions. Then when you're learning, you always like to test your learning. And what better way to test your learning than going and asking the best of the customers, the most demanding of the customers to buy your product. I always find that one should never sell to easy customers because they forgive you. And India is a very famous place for forgiveness. People always forgive things. People forgive tardiness, but people forgive inefficiencies, people forgive traffic violations. We have a tendency to forgive. But if you choose customers who are not forgiving, specifically choose customers, then you learn. Then you become better. I think it's a search for excellence. So we went out very early in our life. When we were very, very small, hardly doing 5-6 crores turnover per year, we went to Mercedes-Benz and sold our concept. And then they were, I must say, they were broad-minded enough to give it a try. And that is how we felt that Sundram Fasters could make a difference.
So in some sense, you kept pushing going for the best.
Yes.
And at this point in time, there was another person in Chennai who I think really represents this character. Somebody who said that taking on Google may be one good way to make sure that your company is absolutely unique. A person who felt that it's the talent inside the individual, it's really not the qualification that they have that makes them unique, and actually has got 1,500 people working everywhere from different walks of life, and some of them with college degrees that they haven't even completed for that matter. So I think it may be good to stop and say somebody who, like you, believes that growth happens from the inside out, is how I heard you put this whole thing, to actually get the award, and that is an award for the serial entrepreneur, which goes to none other than Zoho. And I invite on stage Mr. Vembu to come and receive the award.
We started recruiting people who don't necessarily have a good background, but who will turn out to do a really good job, and that proved to be the key differentiator for the company. From early on, we have taken people which the rest of the industry would have rejected. Maybe they have a couple of arrears. Maybe they didn't finish college. We are very proud to recruit people who don't finish college, for example. I say that openly. We generally ignore grades. We don't care about where you stack up in your university. We look for that unique talent that's kind of a diamond in the rough.